Alright, to me, there's only about 4 teams that can win the Stanley Cup this year, depending on if they all make it, which they probably will. But for me, we've got Tampa and Pittsburgh in the East, and then the Predators and the Kings in the West. Those are the only teams I feel can win because they fit the criteria that I have made, where you need a dominant center, Hall of Fame caliber center. You need a Norris Trophy type defenseman, and you need a goalie. Well, Pittsburgh last year, I'm pretty sure they were the only team in NHL history to win the Stanley Cup without a defenseman who had been nominated for the Norris before, like in his career. So, Jesus. You gotta be pretty fucking good up front with that. With no Chris Letang back there. So, anyways, starting with the Penguins. I mean, what is there to say other than Crosby, Malkin, Letang? I mean, when you have, in my eyes, a top 5 player of all time, Crosby, you've got a Hall of Famer as the second center in Malkin. You've got a top tier defenseman in Chris Letang when healthy. And then you've got scoring on the wings around him. You've got good goaltending, good coach. I mean, what else is there to say about the Penguins? They've shown it the last 2 years. They might show it again 3 years in a row. Next up, Tampa Bay. I mean, what else is there to say other than Stamkos and Hedman and McDonough and Kucherov and Jesus Christ, they're stacked. No, but the criteria I made before, they've obviously got that with Stamkos and Hedman and Vasilevsky. But there's, like, those aren't even, like, the main things we're talking about. We're talking about Kucherov leading the league in points. We're talking about McDonough getting there now. Like, holy fucking shit. This team is good. And if they could make it to the finals a few years ago, when none of these guys were developed nearly as much as they are now, and none of them are old. Stamkos is not old. He's not young, but he's not old. Hedman is not old. McDonough is in his prime. Kucherov's 24. You've got all these young scorers all around, but they've also been there because they've been to the final before, so they know what they're doing. And McDonough's been to the final. So this is probably the clear front runner for me, even though in the NHL the front runner usually doesn't win. But there's no holes. There's no holes on this entire team. And then in the West, we've got Nashville. Now, they don't necessarily have that Hall of Fame center, but Ryan Johansson is a really good player. I mean, he's a top 20, or he might be top 10 center, but he's around there. But what the Predators do, it's not exactly the criteria that I've been talking about. It's more of I don't even know which team would have had this, but they just have really fucking amazing defensemen. Like Subban and Yossi. Subban's won in Norris. Yossi is, he's probably going to be nominated for one of these days. They've got 2 fucking studs. They've got the best defense in the league. That's why they made it last year. That's why they could probably make it again this year. If you look at what the Predators are, they're a lot more of a team that's going to be difficult to score on than a team that's going to outscore you like the Penguins or the Tampa Bay Lightning. But, I mean, when you have defense like that plus Pecorine, it's going to be really fucking tough. So, I mean, I think we've seen what they've been able to do. I mean, they went to the final last year, so we know they're capable. The only problem is they missing James Neal. That's 30 goals they're missing right there. But I guess Kevin Fiala is making up for that. But if they had those extra 30 goals, I think they'd be, even more of a favorite out of the West. So that brings us to the last team. My favorite team, the LA Kings. And, I mean, this would probably be the team that I'd give the least chance of winning, just because since the last Stanley Cup, they've won one playoff game. Even though it's pretty much the exact same team. Like, there's not... The only difference is maybe Phaneuf. And, yeah, that's about it for the main guys. But they've got that really just... They are the definition of what I was looking for with that. The center, the defenseman, and the goalie. Hall of Fame center, Hall of Fame defenseman. Maybe Hall of Fame goalie. I don't know. Very good goalie. At least. And then you've got that number 2 defenseman with Jake Muzzin. Just a fucking solid. Not quite elite, but a fucking super solid defenseman. Closest you can get to elite and not being elite. And then you've got Jeff Carter as the second center. This is like the perfectly built team. The only problem is they're getting up there in age. They're not as fast. They're not as dynamic. Doughty is still Doughty, but the rest of the guys just... it's the end of a dynasty nearing. We're seeing it with the Blackhawks. The Kings have one more year in them, I feel, until it's gonna suck. So those are my Stanley Cup playoff predictions, and expect those teams in the semifinals, all 4 of them.